Tariq, you're talking about building your strengths, and that sounds great. That sounds dandy. But what about the elephant in the room? When adversity came, I could have fell apart, but I chose instead to follow my heart. When adversity comes, I will never run. I will adjust, adapt, and overcome. Vision. Welcome one, welcome all to your one-stop shop for everything mindset, fitness, health, authenticity, you just being you. Welcome to not only I am Vision of Hope, but we are Vision of Hope. And this is your one-stop shop for everything empowerment. I am Tariq Williams. So if you're interested in podcasts and videos and different things in terms of empowerment, hit that like and hit that subscribe button. So now, let's get into the topic at hand. How to build your strengths. So when I was thinking about this particular topic, the first thing that popped into my mind was getting into a time machine and going back to when I was in 7th grade. For those of you keeping track at home, this was before I lost my vision and became blind. But it was the first thing that I thought about when I started thinking about strengths. So, back in 7th grade, we're in our time machine, we're now in 7th grade. And now, in 7th grade, middle school, I thought I was cool. And I remember on an early day in April, probably mid-April or so, I remember towards the end of the school year, I remember walking into school like I thought it was just any other day, not a care in the world, living the dream, and just going about my day. And going into homeroom class with my 7th grade teacher, Mrs. Deckmar, shout out Mrs. Deckmar, great teacher, and having her tell the class that we're getting ready to have this project. This project that was going to encompass all of our different classes like geography, math, English, reading, etc. You get the picture. So, in my head, I'm like, okay, cool, this will be neat. And so it was going to be a project about learning about a particular country and then doing a poster board on it and having pictures on this poster and having a 10-minute presentation. And, well, I'll be honest, if I told you that I remembered or really thought about the things that she said after that, in that very moment, I would be lying to you. Because after that moment where she said 10-minute presentation, all I could hear and think about was 10-minute presentation. The idea of saying this said presentation in front of all my classmates and having to do this for 10 minutes, 10 minutes is quite a long time. And so it was literally all I could think about for the next couple days. Those next couple days, I remember just thinking that there was a blur. Thinking about how I was going to do this presentation, how it was going to come together. I was no longer that cool 7th grader anymore. I was now the 7th grader who was thinking about how he was going to do this 10-minute oral presentation. And so a couple days go by, and then it hits me one evening that, well, I play basketball in front of people with my friends and family, and we play games and people are in the crowd. Why can't I take and channel that energy, that strength, and put it somewhere else? So the presentation overall ended up going well. I did the presentation on the country of Trinidad, where my mom is from, where she grew up. And it was really neat to learn more about the culture and the history of Trinidad and Tobago. But bringing it back to now, being able to channel that energy and that strength and putting it in different places was really neat. And that's why it was the first thing that I thought about in terms of building your strengths. So when you talk about building your strengths, you have to want to build your strengths, right? You have to believe that you can build your strengths. You have to have that focus to want to build your strengths. And there's a quote that we hear sometimes from different people, and I think it's important to bring up here. And so when we talk about building your strengths, it also comes with being comfortable with the uncomfortable. So let's take that quote and let's take it with us. So now, when we're thinking about being comfortable with the uncomfortable, the first thing I think about was another story that happened about a year ago when I was asked the question for the Braille Enrichment Literacy and Learning, a blindness program for kids. And we were asked the question, what does blindness mean to you? And I didn't know what to say at first. And I started thinking about it and how blindness has affected my life. My loss of vision has affected my life. And thought about the person who I was then and the person who I am now. And what it made me think about was the word opportunity. Opportunity to build, opportunity to grow, opportunity to work on myself, opportunity to no longer take things for granted. Several different opportunities to make me think about being comfortable with the uncomfortable and building on those strengths. So now there's an elephant in the room. Tariq, you're talking about building your strengths, and that sounds great. That sounds dandy. But what about the elephant in the room? When somebody asks you the question, what are your strengths? What's the question that typically follows? Insert uncopyrighted YouTube music here. All right, great. Now, I'm sure all of you got the answer right. What are your challenges? What are your weaknesses? So now let's talk about weaknesses, right? What are weaknesses? They're negatives. They're things you don't do well. They're things you struggle at. And so what if I told you, though, that when we think about building our strengths and pushing our limits, what if we started thinking about our weaknesses from a different perspective, similar to our strength, and thinking about our weaknesses as opportunities? Opportunities to build, opportunities to grow if you want to, opportunities to continue to move forward if you want to. Having that perspective of our weaknesses, not dwelling, not worrying, not being too concerned, but taking the perspective of opportunity with your weaknesses. Because if you're able to take that opportunity and think about strengths and weaknesses both as opportunity, well, what happens is we're not only pushing limits, but we're getting rid of limits. So think about those things in terms of building your strengths, as well as think about the perspective of how you're looking at your weaknesses. Thank you, everybody, so much for listening to the podcast. It's been great coming together and having this conversation. Leave in a comment some of the thoughts that you've been thinking about when you think about your strengths and weaknesses. And, you know, that elephant in the room, right? Weaknesses. We had to bring it up because we don't do incomplete here. We had to do it. So this has been great talking with you. Hit that like and hit that subscribe if you're looking for more videos, empowerment, and just overall authenticity, you just being you, the best version of yourself. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, everybody. When adversity came, I could have fell apart, but I chose instead to follow my heart. When adversity comes, I will never run. I will adjust, adapt, and overcome. Vision.